And finally, just one quick career building tip, and this um, kind of steps out to the next level of what I wanted to do with this and the mixing with Mike, and is also to add like a career building thing, so that every class that you take, you get some little nugget of information. And this sort of extends off of the Ask Mixing with Mike thing, which is take 100% responsibility for your success and your failures. And so what that means is that it's very easy to blame other people, or kind of put the responsibility of your success on what other people do. And ultimately, that will always lead you to what the other people do. And it doesn't necessarily mean the best pathway for success. So when I say success and failures, it's sort of like a misnomer. I kind of struggled a little bit to put that down, because to me, even when you do something and it doesn't work out, it's a success. Because maybe what you learned in that particular thing is that you learned how not to do something, which is as valuable, if not more valuable, than getting it right. Like I always found that when I did recording sessions that were disastrous, and I did, it's not like I lived some like perfect, like magical engineering life where I never made mistakes and every record I worked on sounded perfect. I was always like, you know, God, it was just like so self-critical about what I was doing and always trying to improve. And also, I took responsibility, for making mistakes, and I thought that was the most important thing. People that you're working with are human too, and I'll give you an example. I actually worked on the first time I worked with Whitney Houston, and the producer was Narda Michael Walden. And he wrote a bunch of songs that Whitney was singing. It was really great. This was for the "I'm Your Baby Tonight" record, and um, and that's a great question, Harold. What was the biggest mistake I made? This one wasn't the biggest. I'll save that one for for another story. Maybe I'll have mixing with Mike stories. Um, so what ended up happening was that we were compiling vocals. So we had recorded like a whole series of like 10 or 12 takes of Whitney, and we were compiling them together. But when the producer was putting together the comp, he was going through the different tracks, and he was literally grabbing like syllables of words from different takes that we were supposed to edit together. And mind you, we were doing this on analog tape and punching the results to another thing. And my responsibility was to write down everything that the producer was doing. So he was just sitting there sliding faders up and down through all the different words, and he would go through each of the different variations, listen to them, and go through all these things, and he would just look at me and say, "Got it," And sometimes it would be like, sometimes within one phrase, he might move like four different faders, like really fast between different words, and I had to write down what it was that he was doing. It was sort of insane. Anyway, the first time he did it, I just got all kinds of stuff wrong. And so we put together the comp, and and he listened to it the next day. It's like, oh, this is just, it's like, it's not right. And I could have gone through a whole thing where I said, oh, it's like insane, like what you were doing. It's like, how can anybody follow that? And I could have gone into a whole thing, but it's like, what? I looked at it and it's like, I couldn't, I tried my best to follow along, but and I didn't do it right. I sort of said to it like, look, I was confused. Now I kind of understand the process. Give me another shot here. But I basically copied it. Said like, look, I couldn't follow along. I wasn't up to it. I made the mistake here. Let's do it again. And so we did it again, and I got it right. And then I did it again, got it right, and it was like, okay. And I got into a thing. But being just completely honest, I mean, I've made mistakes. I've erased vocals on things, or deleted stuff I shouldn't have deleted. We've all made mistakes like that. But the thing is like to own up to it and take responsibility for the things that happen. And when you do that, and you're really honest, you get mad artists who are really pissed off. You may get fired for certain things, but more often than not, what'll happen is people will say, "Hey, man, like you're human. Like you really, you're busting your ass for this project, and you make a mistake, and that's kind of the way that it goes. That's life." You pick yourself up the ground, and then you try to do better the next time, and you try to do better the next time. But the honesty is really key, and being honest with yourself. So at the end of every session, I would always say, what could I have done? What did I do great? Like really, pat yourself on the back for what you did well, because that's important too. You don't want to just get into a thing where you're only looking at what you did wrong, right? But say, man, I did a really good job with this. And it's like, but then also look and say, what can I improve? Maybe I can improve my communication skills. Maybe I can improve, the certain miking techniques. Maybe I can improve my approach, to a particular situation for recording a vocal or overdubbing or bouncing tracks or whatever it is. And so I'm more prepared the next time that situation comes up. And that's you build step by step, right? You don't become good at anything in huge leaps typically. It's lots of small steps, and at some point all those small steps add up, and then all of a sudden you look back, it's like, oh my god, you just got, like, you look down and it's like you've taken all these little steps up a mountain, little steps up a mountain, you're not paying attention, and then you look and it's like, oh my god, no, I'm like thousands of feet above the city, looking down on it. This is amazing. And that's how you do it, just one little bit at a time. But yeah, the honesty is really the key thing, you know. And that's the same thing with the mix, right? Really good point, right? When you build a mix, it's like when you follow my process, it's lots of little things that seem subtle at first, and then when you take them all in and out, like if you've done like the subtractive EQ and you do, like, it's like, oh, okay, I hear that, oh, I hear that, I hear that, and then you do it times 40 tracks, and then you turn all the plugins on and off. It's like, wow, that makes a huge difference overall, right? And so it's really mixing it's the same thing, like, there's a good point, John. It's like it's a life lesson, you know that's how you do things, a little bit at a time. It's no different. The music industry doesn't all of a sudden escape the physical laws of the universe. So things that work here also teach you about the way that you do everything in your life, and they also reveal how you do everything in your life. So I always found it funny. It's like when I'd mix, if I was really anxious, it's like, if I'm really anxious in my life, then I'll be really anxious the way I mix, and that will become reflect in the mix that I give to somebody. So that's the difference. That's part of the New York sound. Part of that is having that New York attitude and that New York, kind of vibe, and angst is like, that's part of the New York sound, is being in that and having that attitude. And when you got that attitude and you take that attitude into the mix, that comes out in the mix. The same thing, right? So that's kind of part of the whole thing. So anyway, there's my career building tip. Take 100% responsibility for your successes and your failures. Pat yourself on the back, and also take an honest look at what you could do better. All right, there you go. There's our career building tip. Let's wrap it up.